Well, welcome to the Red Chair. Today we have Jeff Levine. Jeff, great to see you at Indico.
Nice to be here.
You have an incredible career in real estate as an entrepreneur. You're in Portugal for a specific reason, which we can cover briefly. But tell me, how did you start? You're an entrepreneur in the real estate and construction business, particularly in New York. How did it all start?
It's very simple. So I grew up in the boroughs of Brooklyn and Queens in New York City. And I attended New York City public schools. And then eventually I attended the City College School of Architecture in New York. But along the way, I worked in the summers of my youth for my friends' parents who very often were in the construction business. So one summer in high school, I worked in roofing. Another summer in high school, I worked in concrete. And I appreciated the hard work. And I enjoyed the sense of accomplishment of creating something. So I kind of think I found my calling.
When was this?
Well, I graduated high school in 1970, as I recall. And so it was in the late 60s. And then, as I said, after graduating high school, I went to City College School of Architecture, which was essentially a free school of architecture in New York City. It's one of the first free institutions of higher learning in America. It's often called the City University system, the Harvard of the poor, because at that time, my father was a cab driver. My mother was a stay-at-home mom with 4 children. We actually, for a portion of my youth, lived in public housing. Mm-hmm. I think you call it council housing here. Mm-hmm. It was an interesting experience. I worked for contractors while I went to City College of Architecture at night. And when I graduated, I had already started working with a developer by the name of Herbert Mandel, who was a very interesting character. His father before him was one of the premier developers of New York City in the roaring 20s. And I began to work for him in the mid-70s when I graduated City College, 75. And I worked for him until 79. And at that point, I was still relatively young. I was 25 years old. I was not yet married. I had no family to support. And I had tasted what it was like to be not affluent, I will say. And I knew I didn't like that. So I endeavored to work very hard. I've always been blessed with a very strong work ethic. I am not a workaholic, I like to say, but I have a strong work ethic. And I ventured into my own business with no capital, just the contacts that I had made through my years of working in the industry and working for this developer, Herbert Mandel. At that point, some of the architects that I had become familiar with reached out to me to do small projects. And I started as a general contractor, doing small contracts for the clients of the architects that I had become familiar with during my experience in someone else's employment. And eventually, I began working for developers doing projects. They were very impressed with my capability, my integrity, and I eventually became minority partners with many of those developers who no longer wished to do the hard work of construction and development.
So you got a share of those projects.
Exactly. And as time went on and I observed the development process, I became capable of becoming my own developer, which I did. And in my early years, some of those people for whom I became a minority partner became my equity investors. They were happy to invest with me because they knew me and trusted me. And then eventually, my capabilities expanded beyond their financial strength, and I began to reach out to the likes of insurance companies, pension funds,
institutional investors,
and private equity, who became my investors in my deals. My most recent transaction was a building at the Hudson Yards, and I primarily build these days multifamily residential. The project was in excess of 1 million square feet. Its total development cost was probably in the magnitude of $700 million. It was recently appraised for much more than that because we fully rented it up, even in this after COVID world, at prices that exceeded our projections in excess of $100 a foot per year.
So essentially, you started by doing some concrete jobs while you were very young,
Yes.
still in
Yes.
college, and doing some roofing. you found out that, there was a life to be had there and that you could do well because you had a strong work ethic. And little by little, you learned the trade, you set up your own business, your partners became your investors. And nowadays, you do projects which are often more than 700 million each
Absolutely.
project.
Well, there aren't that many 700 million, but we are doing quite a bit right now. We have as big a backlog now as we've ever had.
In real estate in New York.
In real estate in New York and in Arizona. I do business primarily where I have an office and staff. So I have a very big operation in New York where I have 3 operating companies. One is the construction company, Levine Builders. Then I have Douglaston Development, which is the development entity.
You are the chairman.
I am the chairman of all 3, including Clinton Management, which is our property management division. I like to say we do any building that people sleep in. We do multifamily housing. We do condominiums for sale. We do affordable housing. We do senior housing. We even do shelters for the homeless. So we want to run a wide range of projects. I think I mentioned we do hotels. We have built in New York a number of hotels. Initially, again, that was with one of the partners for whom I built hotels. And then I became partners with him because he also was a developer who no longer had the willingness to do the day-to-day of the construction, welcomed my participation, and I became partners in the creation of the Gansevoort hotels in New York. We actually built one overseas in London, one which is called the Curtain in Shoreditch, which is an up-and-coming part of the Hackney part of Great London, and it was very exciting. And now I try to stick to my knitting, I like to say, in New York and Arizona. In Arizona, we primarily do senior citizens housing because there's a great market out there. If you know the history of Phoenix, it grew from a cow town back in the 50s to over 4 million people now. So it has what I consider to be the magic sauce for growth, for business, which is growth. And there were many retirement communities built out there. So we now are building independent assisted living for seniors to take that next step for the retirement community, which wants to age in place out in Phoenix.
Right. So you've been riding those trends.
Exactly.
So it's an incredible entrepreneurial story, right? Just started really small, and now you're one of the largest, surely, in the US and in New York. And you spoke about work ethic, but also learning the trade and being seen as dependable and trustworthy and someone to do business with. What are the lessons have you learned along the way in such an incredible entrepreneurial career?
Obviously, people having faith in you is very important, and the faith does not come by accident. You have to say what you're going to do and then do what you're going to say and do it with character. That's very important. And something which I stress to young people when I talk to them as a mentor is very simple. Luck is an important skill to have.
Luck.
Absolutely. Because,
which has to create a little bit of your luck, right?
Well, obviously, there's a joke about a fellow who complains about not winning the lottery, and he cries out to God, and God says, "Abby, give me a chance, buy a ticket."
Exactly.
So the bottom line is, obviously, you have to take shots in order to succeed. But what I tell young people that the real estate industry is not for the faint of heart, because real estate is a cyclical business. Mm-hmm. It rides the waves of the economy. At this moment, we're going through one of the roughest cycles I've ever experienced, because post-COVID, I'm sure you're aware that the work from home mode has taken over.
Remote work.
So the office market, the commercial markets in New York and throughout the United States are being destroyed. Buildings are heavily vacant, values are significantly depressed, and there are some banking troubles because of that. That, coupled with the inflationary spiral we've had post-COVID because of the supply chain and logistics, has forced the Fed, as you know, to increase interest rates to the point where nothing makes sense financially to build.
Right.
My most recent projects were huge problems to finance. Mm-hmm. As we speak, we're doing another 450-unit job on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, just up from the Barclays Arena. I could no longer get straight limited equity debt there, I had to go to a mezzanine tranche. Very unusual.
Yes.
I have another condominium, which we just closed on after a year of struggle, having to go to alternate lenders in the form of private equity.
Right.
Again,
More expensive financing.
more
basically.
expensive financing. And again, in a rental, you can't necessarily afford it. But if a condominium on the Upper East Side, where there's demand still, you could stretch for that sort of financing.
You've seen many cycles, right? Yeah. And you rode out of them well, apparently. So what were the things that you did to sort of make sure that you would pass through those crises and keep on growing?
Well, okay, so yes, I see many. I don't know how much more time we have, but I could tell you from the time I went into business in 1979, I was 25 years old, I saw the initial interest rate spike where rates went to prime at 18.5%. I was doing one of my first 4 sale jobs at that point. I thought I was a dead man walking. I survived that, only to go into 86,
Yes.
where, of course, the savings and loan scandals coupled with the Reagan tax shelter syndication law changes.
Every decade there's something big, right?
I had a condo that I was doing in the Riverdale section of the Bronx at that time. I was very lucky that I was able to negotiate with my bank. I actually put a mortgage on my home to put up some more capital so that I could get extension, and ultimately we were able to sell and pay back.
You had to mortgage your own home to get through. So
absolutely.
What were the things that sort of, is there like a common theme that you...
Well, yes, I will tell you. It's, I think Warren Buffett, who always says so many great things, one of the best things that he says is that if you like what you do, it's not work. And I love what I do, so that's number one. But in answer to your question, he also said, when the tide goes out, you can see who's swimming naked. And the truth of the matter is, you have to build a ship that's seaworthy. I just got off a phone with my office, a Microsoft Teams call, about a project that we're making a bid on. And, the development staff always wants to do development. I have to look at the deal in a way to say, listen, the economy may get better, it may get worse. I can't assume either because nobody knows what the future brings. So we have to make assumptions that are real today and with the financing that exists today. And that's the deal we have to make our bet on, not what we hope or think will happen.
Right. Be a bit conservative as well.
Very pragmatic.
And in terms of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs, do you see a difference between the entrepreneurs, say, in the 80s and the ones that you know today? I mean, the world changed, obviously.
Well, obviously, financing is everything. We're coming out of a world where almost every developed country was printing money with reckless abandon. Mm-hmm. So money was free from the time of the attacks on the World Trade Center in 9/11, 2001. Rates went down to virtually zero and stayed there for a very long time. So as a result of that, there was lots of money. People did lots of deals. Now the reverse is happening. It's very hard to get deals done today with these high interest rate and the spreads that the lenders are requiring. When I say that's if the lenders want to lend at all, because commercial banks are not lending today because of the lack of knowledge of what is about to happen. Years ago, we used to build a multifamily apartment house to a 6 cap and sell it at a 4 cap, making money in the process. Well, that's when interests were virtually 1 or 2% with a spread of maybe 2%. So that's why you could do those jobs. Today, interest rates are 300 bips over SOFR, which is 5 1/4 or 5 3/8. Not only can we not afford to borrow at those rates, but we have no idea what the value of the building is because trades in these high interest rates have also ceased to occur. So there's a big unknown over the market right now, and you have to try to either stay out of it or guess what's going to happen next.
Yeah, not going to be good.
Well, no, I do believe that this high interest rate is certainly causing the economy to back down. And at some point, when the economy is going down, maybe the securities start to become more rational, securities markets, I think the Fed will start to begin to lower rates, and that will be the starting gun for a new market.
We hope so, right?
Absolutely.
And without bubbles,
Yes.
which there's always bubbles.
Yes.
But tell me, so you're a New Yorker, real estate guy. What are you doing here in Lisbon? Why are you here?
Okay. Well, very simply, my wife and I have been lifelong Democrats. We were very supportive of President Biden in his campaign for the presidency of the United States. Back in 2020, we had supported Hillary back in 2016. And while we did some of the initial fundraisers in our home in New York for the campaign, COVID created a whole new world. And my wife, Randy, who had been involved in many philanthropic and other efforts in Washington and New York, she was on the board of the National Portrait Gallery at the Smithsonian, the New Museum. Well, with all of that, she conceived of a concept where, because we could not do fundraisers because of COVID, she conceived of a concept of bringing art online in an online auction, working with a gallerist to raise money for their campaign. And it raised a significant amount of money. It was well received with a lot of diverse and LGBTQ artists who were anxious also to see President Biden become elected. And I think that not that the amount of money that was raised was so significant, but my wife is extremely personable and competent, and this came to the attention of the people in the administration, actually the people in the campaign who eventually became people in the administration. And when she got the call to become the ambassador to Portugal, we looked at one another. You know, we have a beautiful life in New York. We have 3 beautiful children, all married, grandchildren. Says, is this something we really want to do? And we said, well, it's an opportunity, 1, to serve our country, and 2, to have an adventure. And we will fly the children back and forth to Lisbon very often, which is what we've done. So,
and are you enjoying your stay in Portugal?
Portugal is a wonderful country. The people are very welcoming. The weather is beautiful. The food is fantastic. And we just love it here.
Well, we're very happy to have you here. And tell me something, do you follow at all the tech market? You know, what's your view on AI and all these things that are happening?
Well, I seem to be coming back to Warren Buffett a lot.
Warren Buffett.
I don't profess to understand AI. It sounds like the internet was an incredible tool for commerce and person. I don't know how I would live without my calendar on my iPhone.
Absolutely.
I don't
we
know
live
how
by the
I
calendar.
The Zoom meetings that we can do today, all of it makes it possible for us to do far more business. Listen, my business was able to scale because of the computer before the internet.
Right.
In the old days, when I started my business, I could only do 1 or 2 or 3 jobs because I would have to stay up at nights with ledgers, filling out requisitions with calculators in order to submit my bills. Well, now with computers and Excel, what used to take me an all-nighter is done by an assistant in an hour. So obviously AI is going to transform industry, but I don't profess to know how yet, and I'm anxious to see it happen.
I'm sure it will be even a bigger revolution, even for the very traditional real estate industry, which is, anyway, real estate is one of the big sort of winners constantly in the global economies, right? It goes up and down, but it kind of goes up quite a lot, right? And that's how people make money in most countries, including in Portugal. So, and, you know, what is your advice to sort of young entrepreneurs that are starting out there in their early 20s? They also have some ideas. What would you recommend they think about in terms of?
Just in terms of they're working hard.
Yeah.
Show up. You know, this whole business of working from home is not helping any young people develop their skills. I observed many people, many of whom I consider to be my mentors. I learned from them. I watched what they did and how they did it, and I learned from that. You don't get that at home, and somehow I don't think you can actually capture the essence of it on a Zoom or a Microsoft meeting. Very important to interact with people, because business ultimately is all about interacting with people.
Very good. That's a great advice. Jeff, thank you so much for coming to Indico. It was a pleasure to see you.
My pleasure to be here.
And I hope you keep on having a great time in Lisbon.
I'm looking forward to many more years of visiting, if not staying here with my wife.
Hopefully.
Great.
Hope you enjoyed this
Thank
Red
you.
Chair episode. Thank you.